Hello, denizens of the internet. Welcome to another edition of Random Brain Farts, and I assure you today's edition is going to be very farty. Welcome back. So Tim Cook, president of Apple, was recently interviewed by CNBC. Look, I've liked Tim Cook for a long time, ever since he took over Apple's broken supply chain. I know there are many of you who rail against Tim for not being Steve, but he looks to be a decent human being, and I usually give him the benefit of the doubt, except when he says nonsense like he just did on CNBC. Our mission is to make the best products in the world in those areas which we choose to participate that enrich people's lives. And so, if we can't make the best product, we don't go in. If we can make a great product, but it doesn't help anybody, it doesn't enrich their life, then we're not going to go into that either. And so that's a pretty narrow funnel then, because you're working on a few things. And we know in order to do them at the quality level we want to do them, we can only do a few. What utter hogwash. If we can make a great product, but it doesn't help anybody, it doesn't enrich their life, then we're not going to go in there either? What does that mean? If you make a great product, but it doesn't help or enrich lives, you're going to can it? How can something be great and not enrich? Isn't that the definition of great? There are many small, great things that don't enrich our lives. A garden hose nozzle that doesn't leak, that doesn't enrich my life, but it would help with making me look like I haven't peed my pants. I guess what Tim was saying is that Apple doesn't make things that are just utilitarian, like a cup. Something useful. Then there's the other issue that you have to be well off to be enriched by Apple stuff. A homeless person might be enriched by hand-me-down shoes that are only 2 sizes too big, but Apple doesn't make that kind of enriching product. The new Apple Great Heat Focuser that lets you sleep more comfortably in the winter nights on those city grades. Admit it, Tim, you make expensive toys that you need to sell a crap load of or you don't get to keep your job. Simple. Former Apple retail chief Angela Ahrendts left Apple a few months ago. She was hired by Tim Cook in 2014, where she was CEO of Burberry, which made sense because Apple had become a fashion accessory company. She was interviewed on LinkedIn recently and dropped these bon mots. Never forget that you have a greater responsibility. That is not just about operating stores. It is not just about selling phones. It is not. You have a much greater responsibility, and maybe that's what Steve meant when he talked about enriching lives, and when he talked about liberal arts and technology and the impact it would have on humanity. I didn't dare use the word humanity, but I would talk to the teams about the impact they could make in their community. And that's what the Today at Apple experience, which is free of charge, teaches. It's not a coincidence that it is only teaching liberal arts how to make you a better videographer or photographer or app developer or musician, because I do believe that that's what you're going to need in the future. But I also believe that maybe liberal arts was a little bit of what was missing in the Apple stores. I have no idea what the she was talking about. But let's parse some of what she said. She mentioned Jobs' interest in liberal arts and technology. That was a valid statement insofar that Steve was well versed in both, whereas I never got the sense that Angela knew anything about computers or even making videos. Then she talked about the impact store staff could make on their community. How about just showing people that they don't have to quit an application just to open another document? I would think that would have had a big enough impact on the community. And no, the Apple stores were not missing liberal arts. They were missing sessions on plumbing, HVAC repair, airplane maintenance. That's where the good paying jobs are, not being an unemployed musician. But when you traverse the upper echelons of very large corporations, this is how they talk to each other. They are highly susceptible to consultants who make absolutely no sense, because the more obscure their pitch, the more creative they are viewed. And so, Ahrendts leaves us with this patchwork of something that resembled English that I know impressed Tim Cook, because he saw her at a TED conference, and everyone at TED are geniuses, right? It was inspirational because it was incomprehensible. What is it, Wancho? Oh, this just in from Mac Rumors. Well, it seems that all things retail were not happy, joy under Ahrendts at Apple after all. Retail employees were complaining that the stores had become less shopper-friendly. Ahrendts apparently didn't like the Genius Bar or anything that resembled a clue in the store that would help people figure out where the hell they should go. Personally, I think Ahrendts' open-air store layout was chaotic, cold, and dysfunctional. She wanted to avoid the lineups, but instead ended up with a giant luxury blood clot. Microsoft provided a sneak peek into their Chromium-based open-source web browser that will retain the Edge name. Credge or Edgium will be available on Windows, Android, iOS, and macOS. The last time Microsoft had a browser for Mac, it was part of the 5-year deal that Steve Jobs made with Microsquish. Its last year on the Mac was 2003. It was a horrible, slow, incompatible browser. We didn't miss it. So, the question is, what's the plan? On my computers, I have Safari, Chrome, and Brave. I mostly use Brave with DuckDuckGo as my search engine. What on earth is Microsquish going to offer me that I don't already have now? It might be a very compatible browser for using Google Docs or G Suite or G-Spot or whatever Google is calling it these days. Will it bring Windows users back to the fold? Only time will tell. But a browser is a powerful tool. Hey, can someone tell me if Safari is still being updated for Windows? Any Windows users who prefer Safari on Windows? Just leave a comment below. Apple has managed to postpone right-to-repair legislation in California till 2020, effectively killing it. Apple's lobby group also convinced my province of Ontario, their legislators, to kill Ontario's right-to-repair bill. Our bill offered some very simple rules. Provide consumers or electronics repair shops with replacement parts, software, and tools for diagnosing, maintaining, or repairing their products for a fair price. And provide electronic documents, such as repair manuals, for free. So if you listened to the drivel Cook was spouting earlier, Apple's opposition to right to repair just doesn't make any sense. Right to repair seems to fit Apple's values, but I guess so does selling insanely out-of-date 4-gig computers that at inflated prices to unsuspecting consumers. Yes, I know. They don't do that now, but from 2014 to 2018, that was the base config of the Mini, so shut up. It seems that Apple took a page out of Louis Rossmann and iPad Rehab's Jessa Jones's lobbying roadshow, where Louis and Jessa showed legislators how easy it was to repair MacBooks and iPhones. But in the case of Apple's roadshow, Apple instead showed what would happen if regular iPhone owners tried to open their iPhones with steak knives and corncob holders, puncturing their batteries, getting drenched in boiling hot lithium-ion battery fluid. Legislators were screaming in panic. Apple crippled many employees, but won the day. The thing is, Apple is trying to prevent owners of Apple products that Apple does not support anymore and will not repair. Shame on you, Apple. Adobe douchebags are experimenting with doubling the price of Photoshop CC and Lightroom CC bundle. Photoshop and Lightroom bundle would go for $19 US per month. Adobe is quoted as saying, From time to time, we run tests on Adobe.com which cover a range of items, including plan options that may or may not be presented to all visitors to Adobe.com. We are currently running a number of tests on Adobe.com. Running tests usually means testing something that improves the user experience. Here at Adobe, we were really curious how flexible our users were. We had successfully managed to get Adobe users addicted. Interested in our monthly cloud payment service, and so we came up with Project Fentanyl. The idea behind Project Fentanyl was to see how far we could push our users. Would they give up food to maintain their Adobe subscriptions? Would they be willing to take a loved one off of liver dialysis just to afford the Adobe cloud service? We found that in most cases, the answer was yes. And now it's time for the Apple 2019 MacPro watch. Once again, we check on the status of the mystical, magical, modular computer that was first promised in 2017. Has the MacPro shown up yet? No. You have been watching the official MacPro watch. Stay tuned next week for further updates. So long, denizens! What was that, Wancho? What's wrong? What's wrong with the Hello Kitty iPhone case I just got you from the Apple Store? Yes, it's for the iPhone 8 Plus. Oh, and you only have an iPhone 5. Well, the 5 is a fine phone. Just fill in the gaps around it using silicone sealant. I have to think of everything.